All right, folks, Jeff finally got a memorable URL. It's jeffsawesomepods.com. His two main shows are going strong. Shattered Worlds RPG is an actual play pod featuring spaceships, magic, zombies, and, yes, robots. And Foolish Wits is a weekly chat show about writing, Shakespeare, daily nonsense, and comedy. Find all the info you need at his sweet-ass new URL, jeffsawesomepods.com.
This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Some Spoiled, a Song of Ice and Fire 2. The co-host switcheroo, the rereading return to Westeros HBO spoiler edition, uncut, uncensored, and too hot for TV, bringing you the greatest hits from the year 2000. Call in with your requests now. In this episode, Rashawn and I are talking chapters 2 and 3, Catelyn and Arya. In these chapters, Catelyn gets really stiff punishment where they ask her permission if she will consent to being confined. And then when she's like, well, I'd rather be confined in this other room, they're like, fine. Meanwhile, Arya is trying to read a map, and it remains up in the air how good she is at that. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Monsters are dangerous, and just now kings are dying like flies.
I am the king!
Fuck the king.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
So when I was doing my intro, Rashawn stopped me, and I'm going to explain to everybody just so that they're aware. Last week, I was supposed to... Rashawn had plans during the time we normally record Song of Ice and Fire now. And so we were like, all right, well, we'll just record it on Wednesday. And then on Wednesday, I was footloose and fancy-free out on the town and getting myself some little, like, skincare treats. And I get a text from Rashawn, and she's like, ready when you are. And when I say that I get a text from Rashawn,
I was about to say,
what I mean is she texted me, and I, with my headphones on, listening to an audiobook, completely engrossed in which kind of serum I need, did not even see that text for like 40 minutes, I think. So then I got a follow-up like, hey, where are you? Girl,
meanwhile,
where are you, though?
I'm out here texting Owen like, where is your woman?
And so finally, I'm like in line to check out, and I deigned to take my phone out. And I had not turned off my Do Not Disturb from when I was recording earlier that day, and had missed all of it, and left Rashawn just sitting at her computer wondering what the fuck for almost an hour. And there was just no way that I was going to be able to like do the reading and get home in time and be able to like before, you know, it was midnight for her. So, Rashawn, this week, forgot that we didn't record on the Catelyn and Arya chapters, and went ahead and read Tyrion and Davos already. So she's a little ahead in reality. So if she says anything regarding what happens in the next chapters, it may come up that you just are like, well, I know already from such and such. I just want people to be aware of like what's going on there. You haven't gone ahead and like read the book already. It was just a series of little misunderstandings and things that led to this hilarious hijinks. So that's what's going on.
And really, if anybody is you know, concerned about me having read a chapter or two ahead, rest assured, I will forget it post haste.
Yeah.
And everything will be reset to normal. The timeline and all other things will be reset, and it'll be just fine.
And, like, at least it wasn't like there was another Arya or Catelyn chapter, because He'll do that. He'll have two, POVs pretty close together sometimes. Yeah. So it's not like you're getting advance notice of things that go on with the characters.
It's also
today.
It's so funny. It's like really, it's a good fortune that the two chapters are wildly self-contained. Both of the chapters I read, Davos and Tyrion, are super, super about just Tyrion and Davos. Cool. There's like a little bit of outside world knowledge that Tyrion is getting that we already kind of got from our other POVs. Mm-hmm. So Tyrion is kind of just catching up. And poor Davos is just languishing, on a rock somewhere, just trying to decide whether he wants to live or die. Again, not a lot of additional information about what's going on in the world. So if I was going to read ahead, it could not have picked two better chapters.
All right. Well, that works out then. All right. So for these, you know what? Actually, Rashawn, I'm going to read something to you. I don't know if you saw the posts around about George R.R. Martin's recent blog post.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I have seen all the headlines and I have made all of my snarky comments, but I only actually clicked and read one of them like 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Did you read his actual blog post?
No, girl, no.
Okay.
I read something about two things. One, he was really excited about a new cover of an existing book, and then that might be it. So, no, I haven't read his blog post.
Okay. I'm going to read you part of his blog post, not the whole thing, because I need to talk about it. All right. So he starts off talking about how 2020 went by in the blink of an eye. I got a lot of work done. I seem to have an enormous number of projects. I'm not complaining. I like working. Writing, editing, producing. There's nothing I like better than storytelling. I know. For many of you out there, only one of those projects matters. I am sorry for you. They all matter to me. Yes, of course I am still working on The Winds of Winter. I have stated that 100 times in 100 venues. Having to restate it endlessly is just wearisome. I made a lot of progress on Winds in 2020 and less in 2021, but less is not none. The world of Westeros and Song of Ice and Fire is my number one priority and will remain so until the story is told. But Westeros has become bigger than The Winds of Winter, or even A Song of Ice and Fire. In addition to Winds, I also need to deliver the second volume of Archmaester Glydane's history, Fire and Blood, thinking of calling that one Blood and Fire. Got a couple hundred pages of that one written, but there's still a long way to go. I need to write more of the Dunk and Egg novellas, tell the rest of their stories, especially since there's a television series about them in development. There's a lavish coffee table book coming later this year, an illustrated condensed version of Fire and Blood, and my Fever River art director, Rhea Golden, was working on that with Elio Garcia and Linda Antonsen, my partners on The World of Ice and Fire. And another book, after that, A Who's Who in Westeros. And that's just the books. There are also the successor shows. I have seen some comments out there questioning how much I am involved in these new series. The answer is a lot. Deeply, heavily involved in every one of the new shows. It's my world, and while I have been working closely with some fantastic writers and showrunners, ultimately it's up to me to try to keep the canon, well, canonical. So far, I'm very excited. House of the Dragon has wrapped in London. What I've seen, I've loved. We're developing live-action shows for HBO, animated shows for HBO Max. I can't tell you about any of them, but some of the ideas we're working on are quite different in tone and approach than what has gone before. And then Bruno Heller, the creator and showrunner of Rome, is writing his pilot script for the Corlys Valerian series. That one started out as 9 Voyages, but now we're calling it The Sea Snake since we wanted to avoid having 2 shows with numbers in the title. The other one, 10,000 Ships, is the Nymeria series. Amanda Siegel, our showrunner, has delivered a couple drafts of that one, and we're forging ahead. The third of the live-action shows is the Dunk and Egg series, helmed by Steve Conrad. The first season will be an adaptation of the first novella, The Hedge Knight. Contrary to what you may have read online, the show will not be called Dunk and Egg, which could be mistaken for a sitcom by viewers unfamiliar with the stories. We're leaning toward a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, although the Hedge Knight has its partisans as well. On the animated side, I'm not allowed to talk about most of what is happening, except to say things are moving very fast. News leaked several months ago that one of the animated shows would be set in Yi Ti. That is true. Our working title is The Golden Empire, and we have a great young writer on that one too, and I think the art and animation is going to be beautiful. I would tell you more if I could. So there's lots going on. And me, I will continue to work with the writers and showrunners and directors and producers on all these shows. Plus, Roadmarks for HBO, Dark Winds for AMC, Wild Cards for UCP and Peacock, and Night of the Cooters, I don't know, guys. Night of the Cooters should be finished this month. And in addition to all that, let me say once again, yes, I am still working on Winds of Winter.
I know he is not trying to make people feel bad for wondering where the fuck this book is.
Listen.
I know he did not sit at his desk in front of his internet machine and type out, how dare y'all keep asking me about this book that, from what I understand, is well past, 10 years? Mm-hmm. 15
it's
years
almost 11 years this June, I think.
Sir, if you don't get the fuck out my face. And this is exactly why I didn't read that fucking book. This is exactly why I didn't read it. Because what it makes me want to do is put this book that's in my hand right back on the shelf. Mm-hmm. It really does. Like, it's very difficult for me to get as invested in these books as one would hope I would become if I'm going to be participating in a podcast that is even like slightly entertaining that you would want to listen to. Knowing that, I'm going to hit a point where I'm just left hanging in the middle of an untold story with a very, very real possibility that it might not be finished. And that is something that can happen with any sort of epic story that you start, right?
Sure.
You never know if the author is going to finish a thing, and you hope for the best. All kinds of things can happen to people. People can fucking die before the book series is finished, All kinds of shit can happen. But to knowingly go into a series like this that is so well established and has been waiting for the next edition for as long as it has, and having a real feeling like that book's not fucking coming, it makes this endeavor that we are on very difficult.
Yes. Agreed. That is pretty much how I'm feeling. This has been talked about in the Discord, and there was some chatter there about if you were deciding to fucking quit coverage, I wouldn't even be mad at you because I probably would have rage quit after this post. Yeah. And I am not planning on rage quitting yet.
I'm not promising y'all nothing. I my face right now is so twisted up. I'm just fucking disgusted. And I know that there are people that have come to peace with the fact that they don't believe that the books are coming. Some people have even turned evil and are actively hoping that he never finishes the books because there's sort of a gleeful pleasure in that, which I was a part of that camp, before I started reading. Just being like, this motherfucker is never writing that book. And y'all should just stop waiting for him to do it because this shit is not happening.
Yeah.
And now I'm reading them and I'm in the other camp where I feel really salty about it. And so, yeah, you guys, I'm not taking rage quitting off the table.
I want to say, I may not be feeling like I want to rage quit, but I am sort of feeling like I don't know if he deserves coverage at this point. Look, I gotta say, out of the gate, I know that he has been hassled a lot from every corner of the internet from a couple years after the last book was published. So it's been years and years of this for him. But literally, whose fault is that it has been years and years of this for you, sir?
You could, from what I understand, before I was in this world, he made it a point of constantly telling people, it's on the way. I got so many pages done. even if I'm not mistaken, he would like ballpark. Look for it 2012 spring or shit like that, you know.
At the very least, he used to say that the books were definitely not going to be outstripped by the series. He said that
I remember.
Times.
I remember, and then look what happened. So, and I do not really relish being on the side of the fence that is harassing a creator, you know, trying to bully them or, you know, say they owe us something, you know. If he were to make a blog post that said, you know what, guys, it's not happening. I'm really sorry. I just don't know what to do. I don't have it in me. I can't get it together. I have these other things that are taking up my passion and time, and I know it sucks, but look.
Yeah.
This is what it is. But he doesn't even have the fucking decency or courage or honesty to do that.
Yep. That's kind of where I'm standing, too. Is just like, and look, I understand that there would be a fucking hubbub if he just decided to come out and
most
say,
definitely.
for sure I'm not finishing it.
Agreed.
But it would also, like, the constant questioning, which is what seems to be at the root of his resentment of his readers. It would nip
that shit right in the bud, wouldn't it?
And I just, same in terms of, I don't want to be somebody who's acting like I am entitled to work or that he owes us anything. But it feels like he wants us all to continue supporting all of these other projects he's working on. And those projects are possible because of the original fans who were reading the original series. So there's a real sense for me of just like, thanks for making me famous, now fuck off.
Kind of.
You know? And I'm sure that he is making some serious bank off of these other projects as well. And I mean, Elden Ring came out, and that was a whole fucking video game that he like wrote all of the world for. And that was a pretty recent thing. So he is just out here just doing so many other things. And the whole, I'm sorry for you, they all matter to me.
Don't like that.
It's just, there is so much contempt in that. Just the whole energy. I was like defending him up until probably like 4 years ago. Even more recently, just kind of being like, look, with the show having actually overtaken things and frustration with probably just feeling like, you know, backed into a corner in terms of a lot of stuff because the show was already out, I can understand how it might be difficult for him to... I was out here saying that I got it. And I knew that it would take time, but then taking this attitude with it, it just is like, I would be all over your other projects, George. Are you kidding? If you were able to even come out with one more book, I'm not even trying to say finish the series. If you came out with one more book, I would feel very motivated to cover on the show like the Fire and Blood series and the animated series. I would be extremely interested in doing that if I felt like the rest of the world was going to be finished up. So it's just insulting to just be like, well, I know you don't care about this stuff. No. I do, in theory. But you can't hold it against me that I'm refusing to get invested in yet another project because you haven't delivered. And like... It's, again, I recognize that it's not just like you owe me, but it does feel like when an author starts something, a series, and is very vocal about promising to finish, about how many books remain, all of this stuff, you've entered into a sort of contract with readers.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you don't... It's just, that's what happens. That's kind of how it works. And the whole tone of this, it made me so mad. It made me so, and I couldn't believe the sheer number of other projects that he lists here. Yeah.
Somebody shared it in a group, and I didn't, like I said, I just read the headline, I didn't even click it. And my comment was, this jive motherfucker with that LeBron James gif when he gets up from the press table.
Oh my God.
Because that's just how I feel every time it's like, I've seen people say, oh, he's trolling. And you know what? It's starting to feel like that, and it's not a good look, and it doesn't feel very good when you're in the audience that he's speaking to. You know, which is also another thing that's changed for me is that I am now, like before, when I was just a fan of the show, this intense, you know, where is the next book wasn't hitting for me. And it still isn't yet, because I'm only on, the beginning of book 3? But I have now become one of the people he's fucking talking about.
Yeah.
And it's, like, low-key insulting. Like, this shit is rude.
Yep.
And I don't know the scope of these other series that he's working on. But if they are not based on completed works that are done right now, as of today, I got no interest. Don't do a TV series covering the first book of whatever series you think you're writing.
Yeah.
Or, like, but I had, like, again, I don't know with, like, the fucking Fire and Blood thing or whatever. Like, I don't know if those are based on completed stories or
they are completed
not.
stories, but, like, again, they're history instead of what's happening now.
Okay.
It's like Silmarillion to like Lord of the Rings kind of thing, you know?
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, it's just and the decision to like list all of the projects he's involved in, I think the effect is supposed to be, this is how busy I am. Can you understand why I have? And it's just like, yeah, but you agreed to all of this, dude. You didn't have to. All
I see is a list of shit you're doing other than writing this fucking book.
It's been, again, 11 years. With constant promises from you. You are making them. Nobody else is doing that on your behalf. You are making those promises yourself. And then you are just completely, like... So anyway,
I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, you know? So I had to read this because it was shared in the Discord, like I said. And I just felt, like you said, so insulted. It was so contemptuous. And there is...
It's smug.
Smug, for sure. I just really don't want to feel this way about him because I have been defending him. Like, I was frustrated with the length of time, don't get me wrong, and I would often just be like, yeah, who knows if we're getting another one, and just sort of trying to, like, mentally let it go. But just the way he's coming at me with this post, this has got me to a place that other people have been for several years, I think. And I'm kind of disgusted.
Yeah. It's fucking not a good look. I don't know what could have made him think that this is the way to deal with this. It feels also kind of like there's a bit of, it's like two things happening at the same time. Like, it's incredibly, like, condescending and, like you say, contemptuous. But there's also a very sort of desperate kind of, but look, I am working really hard. I'm not just sitting around counting my money, you know. You know what I mean? So it's like simultaneously asking people to understand that these other things have sort of inflamed his passions and have taken up his time, and he's excited about it. But then on the backhand, you're going to insult us for not caring as much about these new projects because we are still left with empty hands on this old project that you promised us 10 years ago that you clearly don't seem to give a fuck about anymore. And you're trying to relay to us that you don't give a fuck about it anymore, but instead of being kind of sorry that you don't give a fuck anymore, you're going to say it's our fault because we still give a fuck.
Yep.
It's gross.
Yep.
Do better.
So, I'm sorry, guys, because I know that reading this to Rashawn at the top is going to put a damper on this episode. But honestly, I was feeling this damper myself because I'd already read it and I just needed you to get on the same damper with me.
Dampers unite. That's funny. You know, damper is like it's not an acronym. It's a fake acronym for like when they teach you when you're doing like bank teller training, like the things you got to do with a check.
Oh.
I don't even know if they teach it anymore because, you know, it's just like the banking is just a wild fucking west anymore, at least for me. But it's like you're supposed to check the date, the amount, the maker, the payee, the endorsement, and I can't remember what the last R is.
Registration.
Maybe.
Roster.
Maybe routing number. I can't remember what the R
That
is.
makes sense.
But so now that word damper is just like automatically makes me think of that. And it's funny because I've never been a bank teller. So I don't even remember. But somehow I learned that. And I get really like cranky with all these new kids that are working now, these whippersnappers. And
Who didn't have to learn that?
Didn't have to learn that. And I'm like, why do I know that and you don't?
All right.
Yeah, let's get into this.
Guys, again, I'm not planning on rage quitting, but I think that Rashawn saying she's not taking it off the table is entirely fair. Like, I maybe should not take it off the table either. I would be interested in hearing from folks whether or not y'all are interested in continuing this coverage now that he has sort of made it feel like he doesn't really... like, I know that the takeaway is supposed to be, yes, I'm still working on it, but that doesn't feel like what the takeaway actually is. It feels like, shut the fuck up, you get it when and if you get it, and you're gonna like it. So if there is some other property that folks are like, no, but I really, like, if he's not doing this, I would rather you cover XYZ instead, I'm not gonna say I'm not open to that. Just as something to think about. Just as something to think about. This is for instance.
Because if that ends up being the key, like, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember when the last time I picked, I don't think I ever have, picked up a series that wasn't completed and just was like, meh, I'll just do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And even if I have, reading casually for yourself is an entirely different journey than reading for the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Like, if this ends up being, like, we feel like we're investing, however many years and how many countless hundreds of hours into this property just to get to the point where most people already are and have been for 12 years, it's very different than me just banging these 3 books out. In 2 weeks and just be like, all right, and now, like, whatever. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. It's just like there's a whole vibe to covering stuff slowly and taking your time talking about every element of it. And if it feels like the author is like kind of, treating you like a fucking jagoff, then yeah,
I mean, because when you think about it, when you covered this with Brendan,
mm-hmm.
that was many moons ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It had not been nearly as long since the last book. You guys started...
We started the year after the book came out, because we started recording in 2011, or 2012,
right.
And the book came out in 2011.
And so there was probably a feeling like the book would be coming eventually, like it wouldn't be very long,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then the show happened, and that took up, like, some more time, you know, where it felt like, okay, yeah, the book hasn't come out yet, but he's also working on this other thing that's really about the same world, so it's, he gets a pass, So you guys knew you were starting a series that wasn't completed, but the expectation probably felt like, but it's going to get done, and it probably won't be very long.
Yeah.
Now, it's 2020, and we are restarting.
It's 2022.
Oh my God, it's 2022. That's right. Jesus Christ. And it just hits different.
Yeah.
Because I feel like people might be listening to you now and being like, well, you and Brendan did it, and the story wasn't finished, But it just is a very different situation now.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, the vibe from him is also, there's like almost a suggestion I think I've told you, but you didn't actually experience this because we weren't far enough yet. But like Jim Butcher took a while to come out with peace talks after writing like one Dresden book per year practically. All of a sudden, there was no new Dresden book for several years in a row. And the reason for that was because he was going through a lot of like personal stuff, and he was very open about all of that. And it was only a couple years, and he was being pretty transparent about everything. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because like George is acting like the other book just came out, and everybody is acting so entitled when it's only been a couple years. Give me a break. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm genuinely like, you have to know that that's not the situation. Like, again, I'm sure that this just comes from being harassed by people. Online and in person and whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm certain. But again, whose fault is that? Mm-hmm. Like, you've gotten to a point where you are spending so much time doing other projects that it just doesn't feel like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, agreed. And again, like, I don't think that, I don't want this man to be, harassed and harangued to the point where he ends up writing like this ridiculous screed that he did. Mm-hmm. But, and I don't think that, he should be hounded. But also, I don't like the sort of, I'm the victim here, mm-hmm. Of a situation that I didn't, in fact, help create.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, I get it. You got all these things going on that make you really excited and feel like, these are the things you want to invest your energy in. And you get to make that call. We get to decide where we want to put our energy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We are entitled to make that choice, and he has every right to put his energy and his time and his focus on these things that are bringing him fulfillment and joy and excitement. However, mm-hmm. do that and say that and tell the people that the thing that they're waiting on is either not coming or not coming for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And, express a sort of sincere sadness, not that we are still looking for it, but that you were unable to produce it. Mm-hmm.
We're just looking for some honesty, George. Because it's really hard to take it seriously when you're doing this many other projects and devoting so much time and energy. He listed like 8 different things mm-hmm. on top mm-hmm. of some shit that's already been finished and coming out shortly. It just rings kind of hollow at this point. If you, it's clearly not a priority.
Yeah.
And I wish he'd just admit it.
I am really much more interested, and I don't know if this is appropriate for him to share, but if he were going to write about this process, I would be wildly interested in knowing what the struggle is. Mm. Tell me you've been trying to do this thing and, you can't make the pieces fit, or you got hung up on this one thing and trying to write yourself out of it. If the, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because then that gives me an opportunity to have some empathy.
Yeah.
Oh shit, this man is trying to make it work and can't get it together. And then, we all can relate to that in various ways, right? Mm-hmm. But there's none of that. So we're left to kind of make assumptions. And the easiest assumption to make that he gives us is literally, you are spending your time doing a million other things. Because you haven't given me anything else. Yeah. So he might be sitting at a fucking typewriter or whatever the fuck, trying to bang out this story and hitting a wall, but there's no transparency around that. Mm-hmm. So we're left to just assume, well, he's just got other shit that he thinks is more important that he'd rather be doing, mm-hmm. and fuck that story. Which was really sad if that was not his intention.
Yeah, I think his intention was the exact opposite, but the tone that he takes with it all really does not accomplish that. And again, guys, like, I know that there are people out there who say, I came to terms with it a long time ago that we're not getting the next book. And that's totally fine and valid. And, like, I even felt that way to a degree myself. But now just the energy that he is bringing toward me, and this being my job, and covering this being, you know, a significant amount of time and energy, that changes the whole situation.
Experience.
For me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We got to get into the thing now.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, everybody.
But no, I mean, I'm glad that you read that to me. I probably would be happier if you hadn't read it to me.
You definitely would.
But I am glad you did. Because now I stand by my this jive motherfucker comment. I stand by it. I had kind of made it a little, you know, hot off the presses there without actually reading it. But I felt confident that it was appropriate.
All right. I'm just last thing. I have a theory about what's going on. And my theory is that he probably plotted himself into a little bit of a corner. And all of these side projects have sparked ideas for things that he now wants to include in the main series that he had not intended to include. So he is like writing and rewriting things to retcon stuff into the story that hadn't previously been there, or just like the idea of going into a history of something is like, oh, maybe that's what I should do with so-and-so. I think working so much on the world is actually like detrimental to the main story in a lot of ways, and that he's just getting caught up. You probably saw that post from Brandon Sanderson where he like talks about how he has a confession to make and he accidentally wrote an additional like 4 books. And I don't know if you watched it, but basically he was working on world building for his story and realized that he had world built with entire whole other novels and is releasing those, you know, as novels in addition to the main thing that he was working on, that all of that is designed to support, rather than those being the main event instead of the thing that he was, you know, promising to deliver. So I understand getting completely caught up in your universe, but I think that when a writer doesn't have these sorts of other projects that have deadlines and expectations and paychecks, that works as a buoy to the main project. And instead, he's putting cart before horse here.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Let's talk about Catelyn. The whole thing with Catelyn, with her, again, just being like, they go, is it okay? Would you consent to being confined to your rooms?
I love how awkward it is for these men to kind of like low-key arrest her. And how it's like the ever, you know, the fucking evergreen meme of how hard it is to call and make a doctor's appointment. Like there's just like you just there's a million other things you'd rather do. It's, you know, you just
Yep.
And this is what it's like. They're just like, I don't want to have to. Oh man, but she's, you know, she's the boss's daughter, and now I gotta fucking write her up for being late to work 3 times this week.
Do you remember that episode of Scrubs where she's going easy on that kid? Where's the fun?
Yeah.
And it turns out that his dad is like, no, I want you to fucking crush him. And she's like, oh, cool. But yeah, this, like, she asks eventually, she's like, well, confine me to the room that my dad's in so that I can at least be with him. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. They seem like grateful for being given an alternative.
She like half of the time when she's engaged with them about, like, you know, what she did and where she's going to be held, and they're like desperate to come up with anything to sort of excuse what she's done, and they're just like, yeah, we're going to blame it on a mother's madness. That they'll understand that. And And she's thinking to herself a lot of the time, oh, this poor guy. He's known me since I was like a little kid and watched me like marry, you know, Warden of the North or whatever. And now I've put him in this position that he has to like.
Yeah, and they're trying to be like, oh, I'm sure it was this that kind. She's like, no, I knew treason was happening. I knew that I was doing that. So, you know,
and he's
whatever.
Like she is like, you should just put me in chains, and the guy is like, chains. What? I could never.
Oh, bless him. So yeah, she gets her stuff moved to her dad's bedchamber, and when she is there, he keeps talking about Tansy.
Yeah. Her father is like, I can't believe he's still alive. Bless his heart. He is just
hanging on.
He's really just hanging on. Like, this is a description of his bedchamber, and it is just so visceral. She talks about the smell of death, and that is like a thing, you know, where it's not like the same, not the smell of after death, y'all. Which you guys, if you're longtime listeners, you will know about my experience with that. But oh, good Lord! But this is sort of an impending death smell, which is different. And the description of it, I'm just like, yeah, that's right. Like when you go to see somebody in the hospital towards the end or whatever, and you kind of just get this feeling that it's very, very close. And he is talking about this Tansy woman, and I have no idea what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And either does Cat.
Yeah, she's thinking like maybe he hooked up with some common woman, because Tansy is like a commoner's name. That's not likely to be somebody who, you know. Yeah,
it's like a noblewoman wouldn't have like a nickname
and
like that.
Probably
sort of
if
thing.
They did, she'd know who they were.
Yeah. She asked somebody. I think this is the
maester,
the guard or the maester. And he's just like, yeah, no, it doesn't sound right to me. But you know, I can ask around.
And there's some girl that he's like, maybe it was her, and it turns out that girl's name was Violet.
Yeah, who Cat remembers.
Yeah,
really well, which I was surprised. I was like, oh shit, okay. But the things that her father says, he says, "Forgive me the blood, oh please," which. I mean, I was thinking like it could be like the blood of childbirth. I think Kat thinks that as well. But then also it could be like, you know, somebody dying or somebody being murdered. And he says, what else does he say? He says something about being trueborn.
Yeah, he says, let's see, be a good wife and the gods will bless you, sons, trueborn sons.
Yeah, and he says, you'll have others, sweet babes and trueborn. So, this is sounding very much like a child that was born but couldn't be kept. Maybe not necessarily murdered, but possibly sent away. Yeah, I don't know. And she doesn't either.
Yeah, what she winds up, like, later on in the chapter... She's thinking about how her and Lysa got pregnant at the same time. And let's see, she and her sister had been married on the same day and left in their father's care when their new husbands had ridden off to join Robert's rebellion. Afterward, when their moonblood did not come at the accustomed time, Lysa had gushed happily of the sons she was certain they carried. But Lysa's blood had come not long after, and all the joy had gone out of her. Catelyn had always thought that Lysa had simply been a little late, but if she had been with child, and she recalls handing over Rob for Lysa to hold, and Lysa just completely crumpling, and handing it back.
There's a bit too about Lysa marrying Jon Arryn, and how the marriage was basically last minute thrown together in like sort of the effort to, you know, consolidate power and all that. And that Jon Arryn had a history, had been married before, and that had never had any children, or at least hadn't had an heir. And the idea that he would have needed a young wife who was known to be fertile. So this is... and she's got the one... Lysa has the one son, Sweet Robin, who we are at least led to believe he's not, like, really healthy. Which could also be... Like, if Lysa has difficulty carrying children to term, and she did carry one, you know, that he might be sickly.
Yeah.
Is not, like, far-fetched. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this Tansy... I don't know. And this is not anything that was at all in the show, if I recall.
I don't think so, no. Pretty sure
so
not.
I can't even, like, count on, like, some kind of thought... you know, that's been floating around my brain for 10 years, popping up to make it make sense.
And she comes to this conclusion eventually. She says Lysa was the price Jon Arryn had to pay for the swords and spears of House Tully. Small wonder her sister's marriage had been so loveless. The Arryns were proud and prickly of their honor. Lord Jon might wed Lysa to bind the Tullys to the cause of the rebellion, and in hopes of a son. But it would have been hard for him to love a woman who came to his bed soiled and unwilling.
Yeah.
So she's thinking somehow Lysa got pregnant before, and who's the father? What's going on there? And that it was known that she had, you know, been with child. Like there was awareness about that.
Yeah, there was an awareness, but the awareness was. Not the kind of thing that became common knowledge, you know, so it was one of those kind of secrets that only a few people very high up know, which is, when you think about the time, and the way information seems to move in this world, that Catelyn wouldn't know all these years later, you know, that the secret had really been that well kept. Is pretty remarkable to me.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like in this world, information like that would have been weaponized and used. And maybe it was, and I just don't know. You know what I mean? But that feels like something that you throw in somebody's face if they don't do what you want them to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I'm very curious.
And she says that Lysa miscarries like 5 times. So, yeah, whatever is going on, like, there is something up. And she goes and talks to her dad and tells him, I know what you did, which is really quite a move.
Quite a gambit.
Yeah. I mean, not that he knows what she's even saying to him. But nevertheless. And she decides to write to her sister about the regret that their father holds for the way that he handled things with her. He needs your forgiveness. He's holding on for your forgiveness. And asks her to come to Riverrun. Or asks her, Lysa, to come to Riverrun to see their father on his deathbed, because she thinks that's going to be what sort of gives him peace and allows him to pass. And again, this is a whole thing that isn't on the show. And what do you think that Lysa's reaction to this is going to be?
Well, based on what I know of her from the show and the few times they've asked her to, like, you know, engage in this war and ride for whoever, she's always been like, no, I'm not leaving. So I don't know. I am of the mind that she says no. Okay. Because that's what I know about her character. But what I know about her character might not necessarily be accurate.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if she comes, I don't see how she agrees to take this trip. The way things are in the world, as dangerous as things are with the war raging. Yeah. I don't see her coming.
Catelyn gives her the option to write instead and give her forgiveness that way. So you think Lysa will just do that?
I think she writes but doesn't forgive.
Okay.
because she also strikes me as being like really, again, based on like the little bit I remember from an earlier book and then what I got from the show. She seems really bitter and very, very angry, and doesn't seem like she has a lot of forgiveness in her heart.
Yeah.
She seems like a woman who feels like she has been wronged at every turn. And this is a little bit of, if any of what Kat is theorizing is true, that then makes her character make even more sense. You know? If she was pregnant, we know that she has the sort of infatuation from the show with Peter, right? If, in fact, he is the father, which would be wild, if there was a pregnancy, right? And he's the father. My God.
Yeah.
Because then he would have to not know. But then, how does he not know? It's just like
Peter would
the
have to not
implications.
know that she had been pregnant, or
Well, here's the thing. Like, it's hard for me to imagine a world that Peter Baelish knows he knocked up Lysa Tully. And then doesn't ever use that information in a way that's obvious that it benefits him. Because he's all about taking information and making it work for him. Whether it's like keeping people quiet or making people do things or just having power over other people. So it's also hard for me to imagine a world where Peter Baelish doesn't know. Because his whole trade is in information. Right? So a Peter Baelish that knocks up a noblewoman, in my mind, immediately forces a marriage to said noblewoman because he's such a social climber, right? So I don't know. Like I don't know. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, interesting.
But my thing about Lysa is, again, she just seems very much like somebody who is holding a lot of grudges and feels like she was either wronged or even more accurately robbed.
Yeah.
Of things she was due, robbed of a chance of being married to somebody who loved her, that she loved, robbed of all the children that she, was meant to have. And then, ultimately her husband was murdered. So I don't see her having a lot of forgiveness in her heart. If that is what needs forgiving. Kat could be 100% wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. This is all kind of speculation based on her memories of how Lysa was.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well,
I was just going to say, you're saying that, like, Peter, if he had gotten her pregnant, would have forced a marriage, but
would have tried. I don't know how successful he would have been.
Yeah, because he was not really considered of a rank for either of them, like, for that to be appropriate for either of them, right?
Well, yeah, that which is why I would think the pregnancy would be the leverage that he would try to use to force something he couldn't otherwise be entitled to.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, he just, tells the whole world. You know what I mean? Like, trying to... I'm not saying he'd be successful, but I feel like he would try it.
Interesting, okay.
But yeah, so...
All right, cool. So... The other thing that happens in this chapter is that Edmure comes back. And that's something that I feel like they pretty much carried from the show, is that Edmure isn't super good at any of this.
Yeah, he's really not.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know if we're just like supposed to, if it's as simple as some people just aren't very good at things, or if like he's the oldest son and the heir to River Run, and from what I understand, at least the Tullys are like, I'm trying to stay away from like good or bad, but they are a upstanding family,
right? And
did Lord Tully just have the great misfortune of having a completely inept son and heir? And that's just like how that dice just kind of rolled for him. Like he, and he just, despite his rank and his title and all that, he's just not cut out to be a man in his position.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or if he's the result of some lackluster parenting. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to take away from that. You know what I mean? So, but I feel like he's just supposed to be a guy who inherited his role and his power and is just not very good at anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so he comes in and tells her about the fact that Stannis lost the battle at King's Landing. And he's, like, obviously devastated by this because he knows about Highgarden, but she doesn't yet. And all she's thinking is, like, oh, the guy who fucking somehow used witchcraft to kill his brother didn't win. I can't say I'm sorry about that. But then Highgarden declared for Joffrey, Dorne as well, all the South. And
yeah.
He says...
And this is when you decide to fucking...
Yep. And he says, you had no right. And she says, I had a mother's right. No right, Edmure repeated. I was like, yeah, you're not wrong about that. I had a mother's right. That's nothing, Catelyn. And you know that's nothing, so stop it.
Yeah. And he says... you know, he was Rob's captive, and I was in charge of him, so you basically made me look really, really bad here. And I was supposed to keep him safe. And Kat is like, well, Brienne will keep him safe.
Yeah.
And she is trying to explain that, you know, Brienne is going to take him to King's Landing, she's going to come back with the girls, and this is all going to work out. And he is just like, no, Cersei would never. And so she's like, well, it's Tyrion. That's who I'm fucking counting on. And she gets the news. The news isn't accurate, but it's terrible.
Yeah.
He's going to be dead in a day or two.
It said he took an axe in the head during battle. And she is just like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah. That is the news that really changes things for her, because everything else that she's learned, like from Edmure and from some of the guards, which how funny is it that the guards keep running out of the room? Like, am I supposed to talk to you?
Oh my God, right? I'm not allowed.
But this bit of information she heard earlier that Robb was hurt, and that was upsetting. But then that Tyrion, you know, might be dead and not able to be the person that she was hoping would be in place and power in King's Landing to make this trade is devastating.
Yeah, this also is followed up by him saying that he sent ravens out for them to all look for Jaime.
This asshole! You guys, what the fuck? Why? What is he thinking?
He wants to get Jaime back.
Oh my god. And Kat is like, my brother is a goddamn This is
Have no fear. I left your part out. I wrote that he had escaped and offered 1,000 dragons for his capture. And Catelyn is just like, holy shit.
You have just put a giant fucking target on their back. Nobody knew that he was loose. They could have, traveled, sort of under the cover of not necessarily anonymity, but at least people believing that he was being held somewhere, so no one would be looking for him. And now, everybody looking for him.
Yep. And the thing here is that because Edmure is so certain that they would never have gotten to King's Landing anyway, because he does not trust that Brienne can manage this job.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
His decision to send word so that he can get Jaime back makes sense from his point of view. But from where we're sitting, we just know that this is just going to cause trouble, that Brienne is like equal to a lot of what's being thrown at her, but there is a limit,
Yeah. Also, a really, really good distinction that Kat makes that I hadn't really even thought about is that if this is an escape, then there's no trade. So, what have you really done, sir?
Yeah, because he's like, don't worry. I didn't tell them what you did. And she's like, no, but what I did was the part that matters, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Edmure.
Yeah.
Edmure.
Do you know what you've done? She says.
Mm-hmm. And
the answer is he does not.
He does not. And she says, you have ensured that I'm never going to see my daughters again. And then she just yells at him to get the fuck out.
Basically.
And that's
the end of the chapter. More to say to you. Get out. Yep. I love that she's the one that's like basically being held just to her little one room or whatever. Mm-hmm. And yet she, like, banishing someone from your cell is such a flex.
Honestly. And it sounds like he listens to her, which is also, like, telling, you know. So then we go to the Arya chapter. And this is something that, so I'm reading this from the illustrated edition, like I had mentioned before, on Kindle. And the illustrated edition for Clash of Kings was in color, most of the illustrations and whatnot. And this one, it seems like it's almost all pencil drawings. I haven't come across any color illustrations, and I'm not looking ahead, you know, I'm just kind of going with what I'm seeing. But the pencil drawing for the start of the Arya chapter is her reaching for an apple. I'm going to send this to you.
If it's the rotted one with the worms, I don't want to see it.
What?
Is it the rotted apple with the worms?
No, what are you talking about?
I don't know. I read something recently about somebody biting into an apple and it was filled with worms, but it was still delicious and they still ate it.
Oh, you're talking about, isn't that like one of Bran's visions or something?
Maybe.
Yeah. I just texted it to you, though. It's an illustration of Arya reaching up for an apple from the same tree that a bunch of men are hanging dead from. And it's so simple and just really upsetting. You know, like there is just, well, like it's described within the text, but somehow it doesn't quite come across how horrific it is until you see it. So, yeah, I'll definitely be using this as a image for this episode. But and also it's an illustration that I think really gets across how young Arya is. Also, she really looks like a kid, so I appreciate it, because like sometimes the illustrations that I've seen, it's like, yeah, they gave her a kid's body, but then she has the sort of adult face in some ways, like the fierceness and whatever. And here, it just, she's got straight up kid energy, you know?
Yeah. That's an upsetting little
You
image.
see it? Yeah.
I could have swore to say the apple. I'm looking for the apple part now, but I can't remember where in the chapter it is.
It might be. I might have just missed it because I was focusing on this. But, okay, so they are riding in the rain, and Arya is taking the lead. And we find out later that Arya is using moss to determine which direction to go in. Which is not exactly a reliable method.
It is so common. That comes up in TV, in movies, in books, all the time. Yep. I was just watching something, a comedy, and they were lost in the woods. And they were like, oh, moss only grows on the north side of the tree, so this is north. And the person was like, oh, that's amazing. So, do we want to head north, though? Is that where our place is? And everybody was just like, actually, we... Right.
And the theory behind this is that north is going to get the least sunlight. And moss thrives in a, partial sunlight darkness. And so, if it's north-facing, that's going to make sense. But if you're in a forest where sunlight is not going to pierce through the canopy to begin with, shit's going to grow all over the place. It's not going to
be moss everywhere.
Yeah. And she's thinking about the fact that they have stolen 3 horses and she killed somebody.
Yeah.
And they are absolutely going to pursue her. And that I appreciated because a part of me initially was kind of like, well, they're nobody. Who's going to really care? And then when she like puts it like, oh yeah, we stole 3 of their horses, and I stole a dagger from Roose Bolton specifically, I was like, oh yeah, that's particularly bad.
Yeah, they're definitely sending somebody after you.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you think about the way they were able to get out, you're like, well, she had to do what she had to do. But then afterwards, you're just like, maybe there was a way they could have just slipped out quietly, and that would have been better.
Yeah. And Arya, if they catch us, he'll cut off our hands and feet, and then Roose Bolton will peel the skin off us. And I'm like, I want to say that this is a little girl's fevered imagination, but I'm honestly not sure that that's true.
Listen,
this feels like something that might be actually correct.
Yeah. This feels like she was there long enough to get a very good understanding of exactly how this kind of behavior would be dealt with. I don't think she's exaggerating. Yeah. And it is why she is, like, refusing to stop or slow the pace. Yeah. She is like, we have to keep moving. And Gendry and Hot Pie are kind of just like, well, my butt hurts and I got blisters. And she is like, death is chasing us. Yep. We cannot stop.
And they can't, like, be on the roads at all. So everything is going through, brush, and she follows a river for a little while to try and throw dogs off in case they bring dogs with them. And she's noticing that, like, Hot Pie seems as scared of her, or seems terrified of her as much as he's terrified of the men coming after them. Yeah. And she's like, all right, maybe he should be scared of me, because now he'll actually listen to me and do what he's told, unlike all the other fucking times.
She really leans into that, which I'm not mad about. The kind of, because if you are in a position where you have to argue and belabor everything you say to the people that are, like, ideally listening to you, that shit is exhausting. Sometimes you just want to tell somebody to do a thing, and then they just do the fucking thing, because you know what you're talking about. And for Arya, too, like, she swings wildly from being in a position of knowing, like, the thing to do, and also moments where they have to admit that, yeah, the map says that there's a river here, and there's a river here, but is it the river I think it is? Like, I don't know. Well, she's like, there's no sign.
That never even occurred to me. And, like, guys, those of you who grew up with just always having phones don't know the struggle of having, like, MapQuest directions. Where it's like, I not only, like, in MapQuest is great, even in comparison, because it gives you turn by turn a lot of the time, although it might not be updated to whatever's going on.
It was a huge improvement. Yeah. Like, we were printing MapQuest directions to then carry in the car before, like, you could use it on your phone. And that was the height of, like, it was the future.
There was a TikTok I saw where it was like the caption was, phones are leading to people being too distracted when they're in their cars. And then it showed a clip that's allegedly from the 90s of this guy trying to change CDs while he's got one in his mouth and he's opening his book of CDs and flipping through to put it away while frantically trying to, like, and then he's got the stapled MapQuest directions and he's flipping through the pages and almost like going off the road. And I was like, yeah, honestly, that is not untrue.
That is what it was like. When I did the cross country drive, we had, like, a fucking atlas in the fucking car. Like, it was beautiful, but it was so common. Like, everybody had these giant maps, and it was the whole United States in this really nicely bound, like, book that kind of unrolled. Ooh. And that is how we navigated from, Atlanta, Georgia to New Orleans, and then New Orleans to the West Coast. This fucking giant thing.
My parents had a series of maps of each of the states, and they were folded up inside this, like, plastic box that had like a flip top, and it was like something that they got from National Geographic. I still remember it was like bright yellow, and it had the National Geographic logo on the side, and I thought that was like standard, and it came with the car because kids don't understand how anything works. So yeah, it was a struggle, guys. So yeah, the fact that Arya doesn't know what she's doing here, like, I just think, they've got a map, they're good.
Yeah, it feels like that. Like, but yeah, she's like, yeah, there's a river, but and then she knows enough to be like, well, this isn't big enough to be what I want it to be. It's not big enough to be the trident, or this thing is too small, or it's going the wrong way. But it's really not enough information, in my opinion, to be traipsing through the woods.
Yeah.
As a fugitive, I would want, I don't know, more detailed directions on how to get to my safe place. And being reminded of just how young she is, and that she has taken on this, no, this is something I can do. To the point where at one point she's just like, fuck them, I'll just leave them and I'll just go on my own.
Yep. Okay. I gotta stop with the tangents. She has to chase after Hot Pie at one point because his horse gets spooked and just like fucking tears off into the woods. Gendry gets like bounced off of his horse at one point, and he just like puts his mouth in a line and gets the fuck up and gets back on the horse again. And they are going through sleeping on their saddles, essentially.
Yeah. At one point, she falls asleep. She doesn't even realize she's falling asleep. Gendry wakes her up, and her little horse has just been going around in circles.
Oh, here it is. She reached up and plucked an apple from among the dead men as she rode beneath them. It was mushy and overripe, but she ate it, worms and all.
Oh, okay.
That's the one you were talking about. So that was the day without a dawn. The sky lightened around them, but they never saw the sun. Which, again, if they had the sun, that would help a little. But they don't even have the sun to choose their direction.
Yeah.
And Gendry and Hot Pie are just like, why are we going to River Run? And Hot Pie is also super impressed that she can read.
Yeah.
And it's just like, God damn. And he wants to know why they'd be safe there, and she doesn't want to tell him. Gendry knew, but that was different. Gendry had his own secret, though even he didn't seem to know what it was.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. This is another good reminder that she is still in hiding. Like, we've been walking with her for so long, knowing who she is. We know who she is, but she's been this other not Arya person for so long now. And that it really doesn't make sense to an outsider. Like, why is she so certain they need to head north? Why is River Run safer than any other place that's probably even closer, And she needs to sort of convince them that she is on the right path, that this is their best chance. But she can't give them the reason this is their best chance. She can't really explain herself, which also makes leading very complicated and frustrating.
And she doesn't want to tell Hot Pie. And like, while I do believe that Hot Pie would be loyal in theory, he is not bright about how to handle the conflict of situations.
The first time somebody threatened him and said, "Who are you?" this motherfucker would scream to the rafters. I'm Hot Pie, that's Gendry, and that's Arya Star.
It would just be nothing before he just immediately caved. Or even if like he wasn't asked, I could see him just being like, "Oh, hey, Arya," without thinking about it. Like
that too.
It wouldn't even
That
take
too.
questioning. It would just be that he is so unconscious and doesn't understand the danger adequately. And if anything, I could see him thinking like, oh, well, if you're noble, can't we just go somewhere and you tell them who you are and they'll take care of us? You know?
Yeah, it would be very, because from his perspective, nobility is the thing, right? That's the thing that gives you power. Like, he's not going to be clued in enough to understand the sort of nuances between, like, the various allegiances, you know, like, you can't just roll up to the first big noble house you pass and, like, announce yourself at the door. You have to know who is loyal to who, you know, and that's changing in real time.
Yeah.
You know, like, they might not necessarily, Arya and them might not realize it, but we as readers know that people are just swapping sides. Like, one minute they're with Stannis, and now they're with the Lannisters, and, you know, they were with Renly, but then they were with Stannis. So, how would she even know who's safe, except, literally, a Stark family or maybe a Tully family? And other than that, you can't trust anybody.
I'm sorry, Hot Pie. I don't mean to insult you, but you just you don't think. You're not a thinker, man.
And he's also a kid, right? And so he's a kid that didn't have the benefit of schooling in the way that Arya did. Doesn't have the benefit of knowing about the various houses and who's who and who's, you know, sworn to who and all that shit. So, from, like, he is, like, the way I look at rich people, I'm just like, oh, y'all all rich, y'all
are friends, right? You know each
y'all
other.
all friends, you know each other, right? You know, that's really how I look at it. So, you know, me and him are kind of the same. Like, it's just like when you are looking at that from the outside, all that shit's the fucking same.
I do, like, and this is me maybe not being very charitable, I think that were Hot Pie educated, he would still have the kind of personality where he just blurts shit out without thinking, because, you know, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just being unkind.
I mean, it's a little from column A, a little from column B.
So, from time to time, she sent them on while she doubled back to try to confuse their trail. Again, this is like, these are good tactics. She's got good policies in place, following the river to, like, confuse things as well. All of this is, like, well done. But if you just don't know where you're going,
doesn't matter how well done it is. Yeah. And again, this all feels a lot like she's just inherently a bright kid, but also she's got the benefit of having been raised by a family and raised with brothers, where she was able to sort of absorb some of this knowledge, you know, just kind of probably without even realizing it, you know, just by nature of having grown up in a world where people would think about these things, you know. Meanwhile, if you're a hot pie and you're just out here making pies, you know, well, you know, and stuff that's going to be like a conversation that you're going to hear all the time, so you don't really get a chance to absorb these sort of tactics. I mean, she spent time as a cupbearer for Tywin. You know, like, she's just been exposed to people who have to think like this, and has definitely benefited from it. And again, I don't want to take anything away from it. Right? Oh, that's right, because it's Tywin in the show. I'm sorry. It's Bolton in the books. Sorry, but yeah, you get.
I got you. Yeah.
But again, I don't want to take away from just how bright she is too, because that's really where it all starts. She's just a smart fucking little kid.
Yeah. So at one point, Hot Pie is like, "My ass is sore and I'm falling asleep," and he's just whining. And she looks over to Gendry and says, "Who do you think will find him first if he falls off his horse, the wolves or the mummers?" And he just shuts his fucking mouth, doesn't say anything, and stays on his goddamn horse. Miracle of miracles. This is one of those things where, you know, when people are like, I would like a personal trainer instead of working out by myself, or I like to go to the gym instead of working out from home. In some ways, I totally understand wanting to do things from home, and I'm trying to embrace that because I have the equipment to do that now. But when you've got somebody around you who pushes you, you think you don't have anything more left in you, And then it turns out you do, and you were just going to kind of let yourself rest before you really, truly needed to. And this moment of him just being like, I'm about to fall off my horse, like, and then turns out properly motivated. Oh, he can stay on that. He can stay on that horse. It's fine, you know. And this just reminded me of like there are so many moments that I have had where I was just like, ugh, I can't keep going, and then they're like, and 2 more seconds, and I find I can keep going. I can keep going for that 2 more seconds. Gendry was having almost as bad a time of it as Hot Pie, though he was too stubborn to complain. He sat awkwardly, and Arya could tell he was no horseman. I should have remembered, she thought to herself. She'd been riding as long as she could remember. Ponies when she was little, later horses, but Gendry and Hot Pie were city-born, and they walked. And Yorn had given them mounts, but sitting on a donkey was one thing. Guiding a hunting horse through wild woods and burned fields was something else.
Yeah.
And she's just kind of like, man, if I were by myself, this would probably like go faster.
Yeah.
But
I love that she has this sort of at the same time this this would be so much easier and I'd make so much better time. But also these are her friends and she would never leave them and she refers to them as her pack.
Yeah.
And we had been having like wolf sightings a little bit throughout her chapter where she's kind of like always hearing them in the background, and then we have this moment of her literally calling them her pack. And she tells herself that once they get to safety, or no, even before they get to safety, if the mummers should catch them, she thinks that she can just announce who she really is, and that could save her and her friends. And then it's like a whiplash. Like first she's like, yeah, I can do that, and tell them, you know, I'm the sister to the King of the North. And then she's like, oh, but wait, they might not believe me.
Yeah.
And then they might believe me and just call Lord Bolton because, you know, he's supposed to be one of my brother's homies. But I just did that shit though.
Yep, she thinks everything through. Give her that. She may not come to the right conclusions all the time, but she's like pretty good considering.
Yeah.
So eventually they reach this river. They're all like, it's the trident. Look at the size of this thing.
The not trident.
Yeah, and she's just like, man, we haven't gone far enough. There's no way. And Hot Pie, because he doesn't really get the proportions of maps, is like, look at, like, we've been riding all day and we haven't stopped once. Of course this is the trident. What else would it be? And she, like, there's no real way to get across to him. Nah, man. It, like, this that you're pointing to where you think we are would have taken, like, 3 days.
Yeah. She shows them where they really probably are. And it's nowhere from Harrenhal. And he is disgusted. He's like, that cannot be it. Look how close we are. You're almost touching it. Fuck no. We didn't.
Yep.
He's just like he is not having it.
And this is when Gendry is like, we might be lost. And she's like, yeah, we might be. Bitch, we might be. And then she just crosses the river and doesn't look back. And they follow her.
Yeah. They are not, like, with this crossing of the river. And even she is not 100% certain. But she knows she has to just, like, keep looking straight ahead. It's that, you know, it's fake it till you make it. You know? Hot Pie is asking the real questions. Can horses swim? And what if there are snakes?
He's like, can we build a fire? Hot Pie.
He is me. This is why you don't ever want to take me camping and nowhere out into nature. This is me. I am Hot Pie. I want to know if we can have a fire. I need to know if there are going to be snakes and can horses swim. If I need to make a fast getaway.
I didn't bring my my insect repellent. Can we turn back? I forgot my SPF.
Once my socks are wet, it's a wrap. I'm going home. That is the last straw for me.
Fair. Yeah, he's talking about how like his ass hurts and his thighs are being rubbed raw by the horse. And like, have you ever ridden a horse?
I have, but not in a long enough way that would cause me any kind of pain.
It is a real, like, it's been a long time for me, and I still remember the pain. And there's a reason that there's like specific pants made for riding horses. And, you know, like you can ride without that, but like there's a reason that that stuff exists. And, yeah. And then we get to this point where even she falls asleep in the saddle. Yeah. And Gendry is just like, dude, don't lie and say that you weren't sleeping. The horse just went in a circle and then just stopped dead. You were definitely completely out, and we really do need to stop.
She actually says with a straight face, I was just resting my eyes, which is one of those things that, like, I will always think is funny. Because it's both something we say in real life, but also, like, a joke that just runs rampant throughout all kinds of TV comedies, you know? The sort of call out when you catch somebody sleeping. So, to me, it feels like not a real thing you say because it's used so often. Right. But it is a thing people really do say.
I've had Owen say that to me. And he has been, like, completely serious. Because he falls asleep when we're watching movies and stuff. And even in bed, where he is supposed to be sleeping. Guys, look. He can be so goddamn stubborn. He is asleep, and he says something like, well, we'll have to go there tomorrow. And I'll say, what? What? You said we had to go there tomorrow. No, I didn't. Yeah, you did. You were talking in your sleep. I wasn't even asleep. He'll argue that he was literally snoring and mumbling in his sleep. And he'll like wake up fully to argue that he wasn't asleep with me. Like, he takes offense for some reason. It's fine. You fell asleep in bed. That's what's supposed to happen. I'm not mad at you. Why are you getting defensive about it? But he just gets so focused on winning the argument that he wasn't actually asleep, when it's like, who cares? Yeah, you were, but also who gives a shit? That happens like, constantly. Like, that's why I'm saying it like this. He argues with me about this in particular, like once a week, you know. So she asks, what about Hot Pie? Gendry points over to Hot Pie, who's curled up on the ground with a big wedge of cheese in his hand, like he fell asleep mid-bite. And she's like, all right, I guess that, like, the people chasing us are also going to have to rest at some point, so...
I love how she rationalizes their need for rest, and that it's okay to actually stop for a minute by being like, well, they're going to have to stop too. So really, it's like, you know, it's a wash.
And then she has a dream. And she is watching the Mummers and a Lyseni and a Dothraki and a Dornishman, and they thought they were hunting her. She knew, with all the strange, sharp certainty of dreams. But they were wrong. She was hunting them. There was no little girl in the dream. She was a wolf, huge and powerful. And when she emerged from beneath the trees in front of them and bared her teeth in a low rumbling growl, she could smell the rank stench of fear from horse and man alike. And we get a pretty bloody, brutal scene.
Yeah. She manages to take care of this in fairly short order. And she gets to where there's only one guy standing. And I think some of the other wolves go down. He manages to kill one or two of them, and it sends her into a fucking rage. Yep. Which is, allowed.
And she literally rips his arm off. Yeah. Which truly, I'm sure that is a possible thing for a wolf to do. But I don't think of it as a thing that it's possible for a wolf to do.
Yeah. Well, why would we? Know? Who wants to think about that in everyday life?
So this moment, this is... shit.
This collection of people that are all together is so weird. It's And the Dothraki Horse Lord has its ego. Or ego.
Right.
That isn't that one of Daenerys's known guys? Is that a name we know?
No, this is a guy. These are the Bloody Mummers.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, they're like a weird motley group.
That's
of, like,
right.
Mismatched
right.
people.
That's right. That's
so
right.
yeah.
Okay. So that would explain what, because she tells us that they're mummers in the dream, but I was like, I saw that name and I was like, wait, that's one of our guys.
No.
But it's not. It's not. It's just the naming convention is familiar.
Right.
But gotcha. Okay. So I guess these are the guys. Like if I'm going to just go all in with the fact that she is warging, right? Then this is the crew that was sent after them.
Yeah.
And she has dealt with them swimmingly.
She has dealt with them post haste.
So I really like that. I am like, okay, tomorrow morning we get up, we had some cheese, we had some naps, killed some fuckers. Let's go ahead and keep heading north.
And this is not something that they do in the show. In the show, Bran's the only one who works.
Yep.
And Arya, I don't think that ever comes up for her at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, we get all we got was Bran, and then a sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge with Jon and Ghost.
Right.
Where they are so close, it's almost as if they know what the other is thinking, kind of thing. But never more than that. Just sort of a like, hey, that guy is really close with his wolf, isn't he? That's uncanny. How about that?
So yeah, it ends. She gave a savage jerk with her head and ripped the limb loose from his shoulder. Exulting, she shook it back and forth in her mouth, scattering the warm red droplets amid the cold black rain.
Fantastic. Woo! That is a fantastic image.
That is really something.
Yeah. That's a fucking death metal album right there.
That is true.
Did you see that dumbass There Are Three Wolves meme that I posted in the group?
No, I did not.
It's the, inside you there are three wolves.
Right.
And then the picture it's a cut, like, compilation of, it's the three women on a subway train. It's the woman, the goth woman with the giant, like, raven that went around.
Her, yep.
There's also, like, the woman that's, like, really drunk and bent over, and she's got a whole fucking pizza that slid out of the box. And then next to her is the meme. It's like a woman, and she's, like, in a white dress on a train, and she's just sobbing, and her head is in her hands. Those are the three wolves that are inside of me.
Good God. Yeah, that's a good bit. I am all about, like, let's pick random animals. Let's pick random, like, icons of people. All right, real quick, before we wrap up, it's time to do new patrons! This week, we have Samantha Hill, Jesse Naylor, Sky Five Angel, Julia Monahan, Mia, and Liam Lane. Welcome to all of you people. We're so happy to have you. I hope that you have joined the Discord and are participating in the conversations there. And I hope that you're, checking out some of the additional content that comes with being a patron, because there is a lot. There is so much. So thank you guys again. We love you. And I think I was like going to say that I had an announcement, but the only thing that I'm going to say is that today we're recording. It's a Saturday. Rashawn and I are going to be doing an Unsober tonight, and it is going to be about preparing for the holiday that she and I invented during the holiday Unsober episode last year. Or earlier this year. I think it was last year. I think it was earlier. Right?
I can't remember.
Who knows? Time is nothing. And if you're interested in checking out the precepts of this 9-day holiday...
We might shave that down. Don't panic.
We're just workshopping. We're workshopping. We don't even have a name for it yet. That's part of what the next episode's about, is like us figuring out what to even call it.
But that channel is up in the Discord, so you can go find out how it goes, because Rashawn and I both felt like we wanted a holiday about like cleansing and renewal and starting fresh and coming to, you know, understandings with people that didn't have anything to do with religion at all. And we just decided to pick March 20th since it's the spring equinox. It feels like a good time. Nobody owns the spring equinox. That's just a thing that happens. So we can just do that. So yeah.
You don't have to pay royalties.
Exactly. And it's not appropriation.
Right. It's a fair use. It's a fair use day.
If you'll check the fine print, you'll see that this is completely within the restrictions. So, yeah, that'll be fun. But like I said, we said that it would be 9 days. I don't know if we're going to really do that. You know? Also, a lot of what we came up with would depend on other people also celebrating that are in our lives, and that doesn't really work because it's not a commonly accepted holiday. I was going to say it's not real. Yes, it is. It is real.
Yeah, it's very real.
But yeah, it's not.
It's just not well known.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we got to give it some legs. So come and join us, everybody. All right, that is it. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Joffrey, Cersei, Walder Frey, Meryn Trant, Tywin Lannister.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.